On our broadcast tonight, on the street today, the president calls out bad behavior on Wall Street. A judge calls out a big company for billions in bonuses. And what we've learned about your debit card that could be hurting you. Murder mystery at Yale University, where police have identified a body. There is a suspect, but what about a motive? Fault lines, the outburst, the aftermath, the apology, and the new champion. And gimme shelter, dogs looking for a good home, and some good people who are making a difference. Also tonight, the continuing debate over cell phone safety. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. It's been a year now since the U.S. economy was on the brink of collapse. It happened at the end of the Bush presidency. A lot of firms went under overnight. Some were saved with taxpayer money. Fixing the economy became the centerpiece of the new Obama presidency. Today, the president came to New York, accused Wall Street of ignoring some of the lessons of the meltdown, of going back in some places to the old way of doing business, even though he said things are beginning to get better. Tonight, we are covering the financial ripples throughout the industry, beginning with CNBC's Carl Quintanilla. He's on the floor of the exchange for us tonight. Carl, good evening.
Brian, good evening. It was the president's first trip to Wall Street, and he did, in fact, issue that scolding. He pushed for some financial reforms that may be in danger of getting drowned out by that fight over health care.
Thank you.
Speaking to an industry alive in part because of government assistance, the president told banks they owed it to the public to change their stripes.
Those on Wall Street cannot resume taking risks without regard for consequences and expect that next time American taxpayers will be there to break their fall.
That's essentially what happened 1 year ago, when half a dozen financial giants went bankrupt, were bought, or were taken over by the government. Since then, the stock market has fallen 16%, home prices have slipped another 7%, and the country has lost 5.5 million jobs. Today, the president pushed for financial reforms he hopes will prevent a repeat of that, creating an agency to protect consumers who take out loans, closing loopholes where there are multiple regulators, and outlining a process to safely shut down large institutions that aren't banks.
We should not be forced to choose between allowing a company to fail into a rapid and chaotic dissolution that threatens the economy and innocent people, or alternatively forcing taxpayers to foot the bill. I believe that jobs are best created not by government, but by businesses.
On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, there were some audible groans as traders reacted to the president's speech.
The real apprehension here is what happens when it gets in the hands of Congress.
Off Wall Street, some fault the administration for not already pushing through financial reforms.
This government, despite having rescued the financial system, for which I applaud them, has done nothing substantial, and is doing nothing substantial, and is proposing nothing substantial to make the financial system and the big banks less dangerous.
One other worry, banks are only as healthy as the consumers to whom they've lent money. Consumers now losing jobs and defaulting on loans.
From Lehman to today, we were mostly dealing with fear. We were dealing with the valuation of securities. But now the banks are working through real old-fashioned loan losses.
And today we got word of even more corporate layoffs. Eli Lilly, the giant drug maker, said it would cut 5,500 jobs in an attempt to cut costs. Brian.
Carl Quintanilla at the NYSE starting us off on a Monday night. Carl, thanks. And as the president was talking on Wall Street today, a federal judge was coming down hard on both Bank of America and the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission. At issue here, some huge bonuses that were given to Merrill Lynch employees just after its merger with Bank of America took place about a year ago. Our Justice correspondent Pete Williams in our Washington newsroom tonight with more on this. Pete, good evening.
Brian, everything about this is unusual. Judges almost never flat out reject proposed settlements like this, and seldom with such tough talk. It was 1 year ago today when Bank of America agreed to acquire the Wall Street trading giant Merrill Lynch for $50 billion. The bank told its shareholders that Merrill Lynch agreed not to pay year-end bonuses to its top executives. But the SEC says, in fact, Bank of America did agree to let Merrill pay almost $6 billion in bonuses. But today, a New York federal judge refused to let Bank of America pay a $33 million fine to settle a lawsuit that the SEC filed accusing the bank of misleading investors. Judge Jed Rakoff said it's absurd that Bank of America shareholders, having been lied to blatantly, need to lose another $33 million. That, he said, would have the victims of the lie pay an additional penalty for their own victimization and would violate basic notions of justice and morality. The judge said the SEC should be doing more to find out who at Bank of America was responsible for misleading shareholders in the first place. Brian?
Pete Williams with the other story out of the financial world tonight. Pete, thanks. While Bank of America is taking fire for those big bonuses, banks are being hit with criticism for something else tonight. Scooping up some huge fees on what are sometimes very small transactions every day made with debit cards. Our report on this tonight from our senior investigative correspondent, Lisa Myers.
When Private Jordan Sid enlisted last year at the age of 17, he opened his first checking account at Bank of America. Sid's parents, Frank and Jean, signed up to help monitor the account. This spring, they noticed that when their son overdrew his account by small amounts for pizza or a sandwich, each debit card transaction triggered a $35 fee, and the fees quickly multiplied, throwing him deep into the red.
Now, I'm not saying that my son shouldn't pay a penalty, but I think that they're just hanging him with all these fees, and it's ridiculous.
One day alone, Sid had 5 debit card purchases totaling $33. The bank charged him $175 in overdraft fees. Total overdraft fees imposed on this soldier over 5 months, $1,785.
When he gets his next paycheck, it's going to go right to Bank of America, the whole thing.
It's not just Bank of America. Overdraft fees, especially on debit card transactions, have become a cash cow for many banks and are expected to generate $27 billion this year.
This is pure profit from a predatory practice, and it's something that in the long run hurts consumers.
Consumer groups complain that banks unfairly manipulate processing of transactions to maximize overdraft fees. The banks say at the end of the day they pay the largest transactions first because they're the most important. But that often means more of the smaller transactions bounce, generating more fees. A spokesman for banks says overdraft protection is a courtesy that spares customers embarrassment, and that it's a consumer's responsibility to know how much is in the account.
There's a way to control those fees to reduce or eliminate them entirely, and that's good cash management.
The SID say they asked the bank to just stop paying transactions if the money isn't there. But Bank of America, as a matter of policy, doesn't allow customers to drop overdraft protection.
Bank of America should change their colors from red, white, and blue, and maybe wear black and white suits with black masks, because to us, they're bandits.
After the SIDS told the bank last week that they were talking to the media, 2/3 of the fees were refunded. Today, the bank told us that Private SID's case is an extreme circumstance and that all fees have now been refunded in full. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
We turn now to the continuing mystery and tragedy in New Haven, Connecticut, that started last week as the case of a missing student at Yale Medical School, a bride-to-be. Now a body has been found, and the search is on for a suspect there and a motive. The latest developments tonight from NBC's Jeff Rawson in New Haven.
A section of Yale University went into lockdown today. The research lab where medical student Annie Lay was last seen is now a crime scene. After nearly a week of searching, police found her body stuffed inside a wall of the campus lab. Her image was captured by a surveillance camera as she walked into the building last week. She never came out.
A lot of physical evidence was recovered. The law enforcement agencies are going through that.
Earlier today, law enforcement sources said they had a suspect, a student, who failed a lie detector test and had defensive wounds. But tonight, police are saying that isn't true. No arrests have been made.
It's extremely likely that the suspect was from Yale and was from that particular building because he had to get in. He knew what he was doing in the building.
Students told us if the killer is a Yale student, one of them, it's no surprise. To get into any one of these campus buildings, you have to be a member of the Yale University community and swipe an electronic ID card.
It's definitely scary to think that, it could be someone that we've had classes with, that I've passed in the halls, in the libraries.
Annie Lay was getting her MD and PhD. Her fiancé got the call that her body was found on what would have been their wedding day this past weekend.
I just think of her family and her fiance and can't imagine what they're going through right now at this time, but it's just, it makes you sick to your stomach.
A shocking crime that cut a young life short and has this campus on edge. Jeff Rawson, NBC News, New Haven, Connecticut.
We learned shortly before airtime tonight that Jody Powell has died. He was a rural Georgia boy who got his professional start as Jimmy Carter's driver, and later as one of the young kids who helped Carter get elected. He was rewarded with the job of White House press secretary. He was a fixture at the daily press briefings, served from 1977 to 81, and a fixture in Washington ever since. Very informal, often irreverent. The duo of Jody Powell and Hamilton Jordan received a lot of attention as the Young Turks in Washington, and now they are both gone. Powell's Southern drawl was distinctive enough to earn him a spot as a narrator of the Ken Burns PBS documentaries on baseball and the Civil War. Jody Powell, dead of an apparent heart attack, was 65 years old. When Nightly News continues on a Monday night, the ongoing debate over the amount of radiation that comes out of your cell phone, is it a cancer risk? And later, training shelter dogs to be the best kind of best friends and making a difference in the process.
There are engines, and then there's the twin turbocharging, 365 horsepower generating EcoBoost engine in the all-new Ford Taurus SHO that has the thirst of a V6 with the thrust of a V8. We speak car. We speak innovation. Introducing the all-new Taurus SHO from Ford. Drive one.
I never thought I would have a heart attack, but I did. You need to talk to your doctor about aspirin. You need to be your own advocate.
Be sure to talk to your doctor before you begin an aspirin regimen.
You take care of your kids. Now it's time to take care of yourself.
This is humiliating. Stand still so we can get an accurate reading. Okay, 18 pounds and a smidge.
A smidge?
You know, there's really no need to weigh packages under 70 pounds. With priority mail flat rate boxes from the Postal Service, if it fits, it ships anywhere in the country for a low flat rate.
Cool. You know, this scale is off a good 7, 8 pounds. Maybe 5.
Priority mail flat rate boxes, only from the Postal Service. A simpler way to ship.
Tim, nobody ever asked me what I want to be when I grow up. Maybe it's your name. Ritzer? Smucker.
When your name is Smucker, everyone knows you'll grow up to make the world's best jam. With a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
Oh my. Nice. Immune balance to strengthen the immune system, so the lady of the house will feel as good as I look. Now let's get to it.
The Complete Balance Nutrition of Ensure now has Immune Balance, a unique blend of prebiotics and antioxidants to help strengthen your immune system.
You better be Bran. Ensure, nutrition in charge. Now in rich dark chocolate.
You're invited to the Dateline season premiere. Till death do us part. 2 marriages, 2 mysteries, 2 hours. Behind closed doors. All new Dateline, Friday, 8/7 Central on NBC.
Sunday, a town hall event on parenting, health, and education about our children, featuring Dr. Bill Cosby, presented by Michelle Bernard. Sunday, only on MSNBC.
NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Brought to you in part by Fiber One yogurt from Yoplait. Guilt no, delicious yes.
Here's a stat for you. There are about 270 million cell phones in use in this country. 270 million, that's almost one for every man, woman, and child. We all use them. We try to keep them handy. And often we worry about whether or not they're safe. It was a concern that led to some sharp questioning on Capitol Hill in Washington today. The story from our chief science correspondent, Robert Bazell.
Senator Arlen Specter, who has survived 2 bouts of lymphoma, requested the hearing, asking whether cell phones might cause cancer.
It is worth taking a look at.
The hearing included a scientist from the cell phone industry who said huge numbers of studies found no link between cell phone use and cancer. An Israeli physician, Dr. Sigal Sadetsky, said one study showed preliminary evidence there might be some risk after 10 years of use.
This is a model of
But Dr. Deborah Davis, an environmental activist and professor, warned of a great potential danger. She was starting a long explanation when Senator Specter, a former prosecutor, began cross-examination.
Wait a minute. Just answer the question. My question is, what is the strongest evidence you have that exposure to a cell phone causes cancer?
She cited some laboratory studies and added,
if we tie that with the human studies of Dr. Sadetsky and others that have looked at people who have 10 years of exposure or more, we put that together and we have strong evidence.
Dr. Sadetsky has testified that you see something after 10 years, but she says that there are so few involved that she can't draw a scientific conclusion. Is that an accurate statement, Dr. Sadetsky?
Regarding the 10 years, yes. But first of all, I would like to say that I'm not sure that there is an association.
Then Specter turned to the industry scientists.
A fair statement of your testimony is that the evidence does not demonstrate that there is no connection between the use of a cell phone and cancer.
The scientific evidence could never demonstrate a total no connection.
This is the way the argument is likely to continue. Unless there is a definitive study showing risk, people will continue to worry about the firm cause of this because, as you said, there is so many cell phones.
Use such heavy numbers. Bob Bazell, thanks as always. We'll take a break, and when we come back, crossing the line, the fallout from a star athlete's angry outburst. The Williams sisters of tennis, Venus and Serena, winning the women's doubles title today at the U.S. Open here in New York. That's doubles, mind you. Singles was another story, and you don't have to follow tennis to have heard what Serena Williams did in her singles match this weekend. Her violent and profane outburst on live television and later much seen on the web cost her the match, handed the title to a competitor with an interesting personal story. Our story tonight from NBC's Rahema Ellis.
It was a shocking ending. Serena Williams unleashed a fiery outburst during Saturday's semifinal match. In a rare call during a Grand Slam event, a linesperson penalized Williams, saying her foot was over the service line. Williams' angry reaction, deemed threatening, led to a point penalty, and that handed Kim Clijsters the match. Williams, the three-time defending U.S. Open champion, was fined $10,000 plus $500 for an earlier fit of anger. In a news conference afterwards, she denied threatening anyone.
I don't remember anymore, to be honest.
Isn't she amazing? A new mommy and a champion!
With her husband and 18-month-old daughter, Clijsters says she's looking forward to getting back to Belgium and her most important job, being a mom. Rahema Ellis, NBC News, New York.
Today, 7 World War II veterans took what may be their last flight in some of the very same aircraft that helped the U.S. win the war. They flew from Waterbury to Groton, Connecticut, part of a 20-year-old program called Wings of Freedom, designed to keep these planes flying. They cover 120 cities a year, offering veterans rides along the way. When we come back, what happens when good dogs need good homes and some good people step up to make a difference? Finally tonight, a story for mutts and those who love them. Shelter dogs are decidedly not pampered purebreds, but those of us who own a shelter dog can tell you there is no greater love or devotion than the unconditional love they give out. Tonight, the story of a Chicago man who is making a difference by training good dogs to be even better house guests. The story tonight from NBC's Kevin Tibbles.
Kevin Tibbles, NBC News, Chicago.
They're the best. Before we leave you tonight, a reminder, this is a big night around here. The Jay Leno Show debuts tonight, 10 o'clock, 9 Central on this NBC station. For now, that is our broadcast for this Monday night as we start off a new week. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We, of course, hope to see you back here tomorrow evening. Good night.
There's more to every story at nightly.msnbc.com. Read Brian's blog or tell us about someone who's making a difference. Nightly.msnbc.com.